Okay, welcome to our May chapter meeting. Obviously, we would normally be doing this as a dinner meeting, and we hope to get back to that as soon as we possibly can. Just a reminder of our philosophy is to deliver value to all of you, to be relevant and to grow. So we want to be your partner throughout your project management career and aid you, especially during this time. So if there's anything that you think of that would be helpful to members, feel free to reach out to anyone on the board. You can visit our website and find all of our contact info. Okay, now that I can figure out how to transition slides, we want to thank Arch staffing for your continued support. You've sponsored a couple of our dinner meetings now, and we really appreciate everything that you do for us. There's the URL to their website on that slide. So thank you, Arch. I'm going to transition over to our president, Marcy, who will cover some chapter celebrations, talk about elections, and issue a call to action.
Hey, good afternoon. I hope you guys can all hear me okay.
Yep, you sound great.
Okay, good. That always makes me laugh how many meetings we start with, can you hear me? So good, we're on a good pace here. I have just a few topics to cover, and then I'll go ahead and hand it back to Shauna for her presentation on Disciplined Agile. We have some chapter celebrations that I want to share. I'll dig into some elections updates, and then of course I have the call to action after those messages. Okay, Shauna, if you want to go ahead and move forward. So first off, I did want to welcome new members. It's so great to see folks still coming in, even during the circumstances that we're having. So I wanted to welcome Katie, Tim, Devin, and Mac. Not sure if everyone made it onto the call, but thank you for your new membership to our chapter. And then on the next slide, what's exciting is Tim also achieved his PMP certification. So big high five or virtual round of applause to Tim. So congratulations on that. A lot of us know what hard work goes into achieving that. So congrats on that. And then we have our slew of anniversaries. I won't read every name because I know you guys can see the slide. Definitely have Lena leading the pack there. What made me smile a little bit about this slide was you tend to see a lot of board members in this list. And that's because this would typically be that time frame of elections and new entry into the chapter and the board, which is a great segue into just a little bit of business I wanted to cover. Given the COVID, it allowed the board to really just take a step back and have some capacity to make some big decisions. And we've actually been playing around with this conversation or decision for the last couple of years, but unfortunately we just haven't had the time to do anything with it. But what we've decided to do is change the way we operate annually. So we were running a July 1 to June 30th year for the chapter and for the board. And we've decided to change that to be more in alignment with the traditional annual year. So that will change us to January 1st through December 31st. And there's a lot of benefits in why we've made that decision. It definitely allows us to align with more of the peer chapters in our region. And that just presents great learning opportunities because we'll have more similarities with our partner chapters. It also allows us to align with PMI's timeline and their expectations with where we fall in our annual planning cycles and when we submit our chapter and charter renewals. And then from a financial perspective, it just brings us a lot of simplification on the taxes and bookkeeping because we were in that VP of Finance role, really needing to pick up half of a year's book, merge it with the next half, and get those submitted for taxes. And sometimes that was even spanning across 2 different resources, depending on where the term fell in there. And then what it allows us to do lastly is it just allows us to onboard new officers during normal business cycles instead of those summer months. So we can do a little more, real-time job shadowing, which I think will be very beneficial. So what this does is it does table the election call out that we had done in March. I believe we did that. And it will shift that into the late summer, early fall timeframes. But then the new term will begin on January 1st and then would end December 31st, 2022. I got feedback from a few folks, and that does seem better and has more synergy with how you guys would operate just your traditional schedules. So some of the call to action is we will need to update the chapter bylaws because it does reflect that July term quite a bit throughout that documentation. So we're working to get that updated, and we will have to put that out in front of you all for a new vote. So stay tuned for that. The other call to action is always, soliciting volunteers. Even though we've moved the election period, we're always open for volunteers. And it actually, because of the decisions we're making, is more important now because we have a handful of board members whose term is up in June. And so we do want to be sensitive to those folks that were planning for that exit. It's only fair that we allow them to still do that if that is in their best interest. So it will create some movement within our board and create some capacity for new volunteers. So I'll just throw that out there. And before I log off today, I'll go ahead and throw my email address in the chat. So please reach out if you have any interest in getting involved with our board and chapter. Next, as you guys all know, and we've already passed the date, so it's pretty apparent. We did have to cancel the professional development day that was scheduled earlier in the month of May. We have started publishing the new date, and so a lot about it stays the same. So it'll be another great experience that we're looking forward to. And it's on a Friday. We get a lot of feedback about trying to do the PDD on a Friday, so we're pretty excited about being able to do that. And then we are having we will be partnering with our normal education providers, and we've got the new PMP prep course coming in August. So stay tuned for more information on that. Obviously, given the circumstances, we're always aiming to do these things in person, but we'll wait to learn more as time goes on and look for that early bird date there, July 13th, to get good pricing. And then lastly, before I hand it over to Shauna, I did want to showcase our next couple of events that we have planned. We will still be doing our annual meeting in June. We're going to make that a virtual happy hour. So we hope that you can all just kick back and grab a drink and spend that hour with us. The primary requirement of that meeting is to dig into the financials. We do like to present that information to you guys once annually. So we'll be doing that at that meeting. And then we'll look to have some fun during that time also. And then for July, you can see that we do have a presenter planned. She's a local professional, and she's going to present how project management shaped the health of these businesses. And she's a founder of MIST Incorporated, R&R Northwest, and PAC-R Investments. And stay tuned for more information on a date and a time for that meeting. Okay, with that, I'm going to hand it back to Shauna. Thank you, Shauna.
Thanks, Marcy. Okay, so I'm going to run through some slides that were produced by PMI regarding Disciplined Agile. So they asked that all of the different chapters have their Disciplined Agile chapter champion, which is a new role since the acquisition, give you this overview on what Disciplined Agile entails. So this first slide, just to give you a little bit of background, Disciplined Agile was created by Scott Ambler and Mark Limes from Canada. And they started this in around the year 2009 when Scott was leading Agile and Lean for IBM. And so he collaborated with Mark to write their first book, which was called Disciplined Agile Delivery, and then they've been just growing it ever since, and recently PMI purchased Disciplined Agile. Okay. Mouse didn't want to work there for a sec. Okay, so Disciplined Agile is a process decision toolkit. and it provides straightforward guidance to help people, teams, and organizations streamline their processes in a context-sensitive manner. And so that is really the key of Disciplined Agile, is that it's context-sensitive. This isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. This is a toolkit where you can choose different pieces and components that fit your project needs. And so some examples here are that you can use Disciplined Agile techniques for IT, for enterprise architecture, security, finance, procurement, even like marketing. So it's not just an IT thing. So as this slide says, successful Agile organizations take responsibility for evolving their own agility. So you get to choose your own approach. Copying someone else's approach to Agile is not the best way to achieve business agility. A lot of organizations look to Spotify because Spotify developed a great model, but that was a custom approach to Agile designed by Spotify for their situation. So unless you're a Swedish online music company, you probably shouldn't copy it exactly. So what's impressive about Spotify is that they basically followed DA by developing their own way of working. So the book shown here is called Choose Your Wow, and it's a handbook on disciplined Agile delivery. I actually have a copy of this book, and if you fill out the survey at the end of this presentation, I will enter your name in a drawing for that book. So as we discussed, success doesn't come from just adopting a method that's already out there. It comes from developing something that is tailored to your business needs. Okay, this is my own slide I interjected in here. I wasn't really familiar with the Spotify method, so I copied a picture from the Spotify site, and you can kind of see that they have a lot of different ideas here, like to increase the release cycles, do small frequent releases because those are easier, to be more community driven and team driven and structure oriented, to improve trust. And they want to, reduce politics and ego and fear. And so they've got a lot going on in this drawing. It's pretty cool. And then that URL that's down at the bottom actually has a short video about Spotify's method if you want to check it out more. Okay, there are 7 principles of disciplined Agile. What does it mean to be disciplined? So to be disciplined is to do the things that you know are good for you, that require hard work and perseverance. It requires discipline to regularly delight your customers. It takes discipline for teams to be awesome. It requires discipline for leaders to ensure that their people have a safe environment to work in. So delight customers is the first principle, which is you delight your customers when your products and services not only fulfill their needs and expectations, but surpass them. So you don't want to be a C student, you're going for that A. Be awesome. So this is more about your team now. Awesome teams are built around motivated individuals, and they have the environment and support required to fulfill their objectives. This is something that is really important to me personally. Like with my team, I try my best to keep them motivated, to give them interesting work. If you attended the last Lunch and Learn, we talked a lot about how to lead teams during this crisis. And one of the most important things you can do is to give them interesting work that they care about, because when they're motivated, they're going to be more productive. Pragmatism is next. So it's about being effective. And that means, taking measures to get things out the door. And it may mean being more than just agile. It's about those processes and procedures. Context counts. We already kind of talked about this. Every person, team, organization's unique. So you listen to Marcy at the top of this session. Marcy works in finance. I work for a police department. Is a process that works for my project going to work for Marcy's project? Not necessarily. We have very different industries, very different teams. We need to take that context into account. Choice is good. This is probably my favorite one. Different contexts require different strategies. Teams need to be able to own their own process and to experiment to discover what works in practice for them, given the situation that they face. And I think this is really interesting in light of the pandemic is, the decisions that you make when your team is all in the office are completely different than the decisions you make when they're remote. Or now in hopefully this transition back to normalcy with phase 2, the decisions you're going to make to allow people back into the office, or what if you have people who are there and people who are telecommuting, and how do you manage projects that way? I think this one is really critical. Okay, optimize flow. So this is about making sure that teams work well together. So your organization is a complex adaptive system. There's interacting teams and groups that individually evolve and they affect each other. So you need to look at the interaction between those different teams and try to optimize it. And then the last one is enterprise awareness. When your people are enterprise aware, they're motivated to consider the overall needs of the organization. And this is pretty critical too. So if I have someone on my team that I have working on something that's really, awful, mind-numbing, boring, they're not going to be as motivated. But if they understand how that boring, awful work fits into the overall picture and how it benefits the organization, they're a lot more likely to care about it and invest themselves in it. Okay, so how does this fit in with classic project management? There's no intention of combining the PMBOK guide and the DA WOW into a single book. Each program has its own approach, and some projects are going to be more suited to Disciplined Agile, and some projects are going to be more suited to traditional waterfall techniques or, PMI-based Agile techniques. It really depends on the project. There are some overlaps. For example, risk management, and governance are needed in both approaches. You're probably wondering about the future of certification. So if you have the PMIACP cert, it is a good cert, and there's no plans to stop that program. So it's not part of the Disciplined Agile program for certs, but if you take a DA cert, you get credit for the work you did to get your PMI ACP certificate passed. So you have an accelerated path to get those DA certs. Okay, so DA content is organized into 4 flows. The first is mindset. So that's principles and guidelines. Next are people, roles and responsibilities, and team structures. And flow itself, which is life cycles and workflows. Practices. So these are goal diagrams. And we're going to talk about each one of these aspects in the following slides. Teams are unique, and they can vary by your purpose. Like I talked about how I work for public safety, Marcy works in finance. Your culture, some cultures are more flexible, some are more rigid. The size of the team makes a big difference. The approach, whether it's agile, lean, hybrid, or traditional. Geographic distribution, you can have, co-located teams, same city, everybody telecommuting like we talked about, and other factors. So they developed some primary roles for these different teams. Even though there's a lot of variety in teams, there's still some necessary roles. You always have a team lead who is focused on achieving goals and removing roadblocks. There's the product owner role that many of us are familiar with. So they own that product vision and scope and priorities. This is So architecture owner is unique to DA. And I really like this role coming from a software background. They own those architectural decisions and technical priorities. So they're the ones who are basically making sure that the code is getting written to standards and that there's a QA process. And this role is not present in the other Agile methodologies, typically. There's obviously your team members, and then your stakeholders, customers, your sponsor, related teams across your organization. DA is agnostic and a hybrid. So it leverages strategies from a variety of different sources, including, traditional Agile, SAFe, Scrum, Lean, and it brings them all together so that you can pick and choose which processes make sense for you and for your project. They do this. This is part of the book now, so we're going to dive into how the book is organized. So they break things into process blades, which address specific organizational capabilities like finance, people management, solution delivery, procurement, and a lot more. So each process blade encompasses a cohesive collection of options. So there's practices, strategies, and workflows that can be chosen and then applied. Your team interacts with other teams and they need to become agile as well. So we're going to go through some of these process blades here to talk about how agile teams need to function to achieve organizational agility. So in the middle here, this is a typical Scrum team, but that's just one part of an organization. There's many, many more parts. So I don't know if this is true for all of you, but I have, typically run into some roadblocks where my team wants to be agile. We work really hard to be agile. And then as soon as we have to go to procurement or legal, things slow down and kind of grind to a halt. So getting the whole organization to be agile and to buy into these methods can really help improve your productivity and solution delivery across the board. So here are some different process blade examples. And we're going to look at data management as one of them. So in the book, there are these goal diagrams. And so you can see we're in the data management process blade, that's that oblong shape. And then each rectangle is a different decision point. And at each decision point, there are a set of options. So if you look at the top one, improve data quality, you can look to the right and there are different options for what you can do to improve that data quality. If it is in bold and italicized, those are default practices. So those are good things to start with. So for that decision point, options include database refactoring, database regression testing, and ETL. There's other ones too, but those are the kind of those key first things that you should start with. If there's an arrow besides the choices, it means that it's an ordered list, and the most effective item that they suggest is at the top, down to the least effective. So some of these like evolved data assets, you could see that there is no ordered list. You could pick any one of those. But if you're doing improved data quality, they recommend doing database refactoring first. Here's another example of a goal diagram. This is the explore scope goal. So Agile teaches us that user stories are a good way of capturing requirements in a lightweight Agile fashion. You can see user story as an option in the explore usage decision point. So explore usage is that second one down. But user stories typically aren't enough. So teams often struggle because they don't understand what other requirements modeling options are available. So there's lots of different ways to model user requirements. And so this DA toolkit comes in and gives you more options. You can see that there's persona is listed here, and that is just another option. Oh, sorry, I should have clicked first. Persona is in a red box now, like it should be. So here are some examples of what persona actually means. So it's detailed descriptions of fictional people who fill roles as stakeholders. So this is all in the book again. It includes a description of that model that you can use and also some trade-offs. So if you look at the right side of that table, it says that it can be used as a technique to build empathy for users as real people. It can be useful when you don't have access to actual end users, but it can also be used as an excuse not to work with actual users. So it gives you both the pros and cons for using that persona method. This slide is a summary of all the goals at the Disciplined Agile delivery level of DA. So there's a goal diagram for each of these goals on this slide. And regardless of what type of project you're on, you will have, these goals. You're always going to need to form a team. You always need to plan a release, no matter what you're delivering, if you're delivering marketing materials or software. When you're on a team, you should choose an appropriate life cycle. So Disciplined Agile delivery supports multiple life cycles. You're not stuck with one single life cycle. Some people think all you need to know about Agile is Scrum. Scrum can be very effective, but in some situations, it's less effective. So if you've got priorities that are changing daily, Scrum may not work as well. Lean might be a better approach. So you don't have to be married to a single life cycle for all of your projects. If you think that's complicated, it's really not. You only need to understand one, like Agile, which is based on Scrum, but it gives you more options. So you can be really intimately familiar with a single life cycle, but you can add components from other life cycles. So we're going to go through just a couple of these because they're just for time constraints. If you know Scrum, you should recognize the middle of this slide is the Scrum diagram. So in enterprises, life can be a lot more complicated than what Scrum covers. DA adds guidance for putting together your backlog, but Scrum doesn't. So it gives you that additional value right off the bat. It also recognizes that you may need some time for this before you begin building your solution. So it has a phase for inception. It also has a phase for transition if it takes some time to deploy your solution. It's very important to understand that if you don't need the phases, you don't have to use them. So everything in DA is about context and choice. Do what makes sense for your situation. Okay, so as an alternative, here's the lean life cycle. It's different than Scrum, obviously. It doesn't have a ranked backlog like Scrum. It has pools of work items, and the team pulls them to work on them as it has capacity to do so. It does not have sprints, which is very different than Scrum. So this is an advanced life cycle and requires a lot of automated testing procedures to regularly deploy changes on a frequent basis. It's not unusual for advanced Agile teams to deploy changes many times per day into production using this life cycle. The next one we'll talk about is the business service team life cycle, which is new for DA. And this is where DA expands past IT. So these are life cycles for business teams, not IT teams. For example, a marketing team could use this life cycle to plan and execute their campaigns. Okay, so right after DA was acquired, PMI also purchased Flex. Flex stands for Flow for Enterprise Transformation. And it's a framework developed by Al Shalloway of Net Objectives. DA and Flex are being integrated into a single component of PMI. So this graphic here shows how value should flow to customers. So how that's actually done is described behind each of these shapes. The strategies to optimize the flow come from the DA toolkit. So that's why DA and Flex fit so well together. Flex is very good at fixing or optimizing large agile at scale programs like SAFe. SAFe implementations can struggle, and by using Flex, the overall system can be improved by removing bottlenecks to improve the flow of value. So this slide, you know, it's interesting. There's a lot there. I went and looked at a Flex presentation and found, you know, a little bit more about Flex because it was new to me. So Flex talks a lot about how to manage value. And one of the things I really liked, I stole this slide from the Flex presentation, is that we tend to manage our work and people the same way. So we do this top-down organization and hierarchy. But you can see at the bottom, that orange arrow, value flows by getting all of these different teams to work together to, you know, produce the product that they're producing. And so Flex talks a lot about how to change your management style so that you're not managing, you know, this person who manages these people and so on, but you're managing the steps between the teams to remove roadblocks, increase flow, and get things out the door faster and with higher quality. So I liked that. At the end of this, I will copy and paste that URL into the chat so you guys can go look at those slides. They were pretty good. Back to Disciplined Agile. Governance is baked into Disciplined Agile. So this is something that other Agile methods don't have. Some practitioners think that they're special and don't need governance, but obviously that's not true. Everybody needs governance. Stakeholders deserve to understand how their investment is being spent, that the health of the project, delivery dates, status of risk, they get to know all of that. So DA provides some lightweight or lean governance milestones to help track the progress and the health of your projects. Some of the examples are, you know, do stakeholders agree with your strategy? Can you actually build it? Does the effort still make sense? I really like that one. I've had a lot of projects where it seems like a great idea and you get 6 months down the road and you keep going. And should you keep going? So that's a nice checkpoint. Okay, guided continuous improvement. We recently had a lunch and learn about continuous improvement, and that is embedded into Disciplined Agile as well. So throughout the DA toolkit, they encourage you to keep doing improvements to processes where you identify the problem, the solution, try the solution, assess the effectiveness, apply what worked, what doesn't work, and share your learning, and then keep doing that process. Some experiments, you learn something, but it's still a failure. Failing is fine. So if you fail fast, that's great. If you succeed early, it's even better. If you get better at identifying potential solutions, you're going to succeed more often and improve faster. And you can do that. You can identify those potential solutions easily if you have a coach, but they're expensive and hard to find. So instead, you can use the toolkit. This slide shows the J curve that shows that when you adopt methods such as Scrum or SAFe, you're going to see a reduction in productivity at first as you move the system. That is going to level off and you're going to improve. And then you get to a point where you plateau because you don't know what to do to improve further. And so that's where continuous improvement comes in. You can see that dashed line pointing upwards. But guided continuous improvement has shown to be even more successful. The important point of this is that you don't have to stop whatever you're doing and start fresh. If you're using Scrum, it's fine, but chances are that you can improve. So start where you are. That's the most important thing about this slide, is to start where you are and strive to get better. Okay, so in summary, Disciplined Agile is rich, comprehensive, well-organized toolkit. It brings an agnostic approach to Agile, which has been lacking in the past. Every different method wanted you to follow their process exactly. You should understand what your options are and which ones work in scenarios. So with PMI's acquisition of DA, PMI is committed to raising the standard of professionalism in the community. Okay, and we're going to talk a little about certs. So to create the world's most respected, comprehensive, credible, and worthwhile Agile membership and certification body in the world, to enable organizations and community members to maximize their enterprise agility potential. That's the vision of this DA certification program. The first thing you can do if you to be part of DA is to learn more about it. You can join DA. The membership for that is $50 a year, which gives access to online webinars, discounts on conferences, other resources. If you do decide to attend a DA workshop, you get that membership for free for 1 year. To find more information about training and DA membership and certification, you go to disciplinedagileconsortium.org. The free newsletter, I really like it. It has some amazing tips. And then PMI is looking for ways to integrate the PMI and DA websites sometime this year. So we'll see what happens there. But for now, they have separate websites. And actually, I'm going to go ahead and pause there and see if anyone has any questions. I'm looking in the chat. Marcy asked if SAFE is still being utilized and relevant. It seemed like SAFE was a thing of the past. How about all of you? Are any of you using SAFE methodologies? You just type in the chat. Teresa asked, is DA membership separate from PMI membership? Right now it is. It's separate. I'm not sure how they're going to incorporate those, but they are planning to. Looking like nobody's using SAFE. Oh, somebody, there we go. Jay Canier, sorry, said that they're starting to implement SAFE. And Teresa said Itron is piloting SAFE. Awesome. So it looks like there are still some people out there using SAFE. One of the questions in our survey about this section is what kinds of things would be beneficial for you in future meetings. If you're interested in having SAFE programs or talk about SAFE, please let us know. Okay, are there any other questions? Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and go to our next slide. Please get connected with us. We put on a lot of sessions and educational opportunities. We're trying to do these remotely while we're still dealing with COVID, and hopefully getting back to our regular dinner meetings as soon as we can. obviously visit our website, PMIINW.org, and follow us on LinkedIn, where we have a group, or Facebook, where we have our own page. We're trying to be good about posting more content there. So I'd recommend following both of those groups. Oh, I'm seeing more questions coming in. Okay. So the web link is spelled incorrectly. John, good catch. Thank you for putting that out there. That's hilarious because that slide was sent to me by PMI, so that was not my mistake. Examples of use of DA in companies. Yeah, I will. I'm going to send a recap email. I'll list out some companies that use DA. The main example that they like to talk about is Spotify, because really what Spotify did was DA. Okay, so for being here, you get a technical PDU. There's your course claim code, and I will pop that into the chat right now for all of you. There you go. So you can copy and paste that. It'll also be in my recap email. And then finally, there's a link to the survey with a QR code. I'll also put this link in the recap email that I'll send out by the end of the day. And that survey has just a few questions about, how these WebEx sessions are going, what kinds of topics would be beneficial to you in the future. And then if you enter your email address, I will do a drawing, I'm going to say Friday morning. And whoever wins that random drawing, I will reach out to you via email to get you a copy of that way of working book, so you can get started with Disciplined Agile. Okay, thank you all for attending. I really appreciate it. And feel free to get in touch if you have any more questions about Disciplined Agile. Look for that email by the end of the day with some helpful info, and then we'll get this session posted to YouTube and Facebook and LinkedIn very, very soon. All right, thank you.